the first great movie of 2024 has officially come into theaters. Drive Away Dolls is the newest film from writer-director Ethan Coen. It's Ethan's debut as a solo director without the collaboration of his brother, Joel Coen. This project is also Ethan Coen's first narrative film in general since The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, back in 2018. Written by Ethan Coen and his wife Trisha Cook, this comedy caper follows Jamie, played by the amazing Margaret Qualley, an uninhibited free spirit bemoaning yet another breakup with a girlfriend, and her demure friend, Marion, played by Geraldine Viswanathan, who desperately needs to loosen up. In search of a fresh start, the two embark on an impromptu road trip to Tallahassee. But things quickly go awry when they find a mysterious briefcase in their trunk and cross paths with a group of inept criminals along the way. So, I was a bit worried going into this since it's gotten lots of mixed reviews and a bunch of critics that I love are hating it. But within a few seconds into the movie, I had the biggest grin on my face. I couldn't wipe it off for the brisk 84-minute runtime. I really loved this. Ethan Coen does a solid job directing on his own, and I really love the chemistry that he's got with his wife, writing-wise. His direction in this film is exemplary, showcasing a dynamic and exuberant use of the camera. He employs it with a real sense of vibrancy and enthusiasm, ensuring it's rarely static. The camera movements are often meticulously choreographed to mirror the actor's motions, which draws in the viewer easily into the characters, and include lots of style, including rapid zoom-ins and outs, dollies, whip pans, and tons of other fun movements. The bold and lively camera work aligns perfectly with the film's narrative, enhancing the overall storytelling through its spirited visual style. Ethan is definitely one of my favorite comedy directors of all time. Right after watching this, I couldn't help but re-watch Raising Arizona and The Big Lebowski. Something else that's particular about this film is the editing, which is so excellent and insane. It was clearly well thought out, and I especially love the match cuts, allowing for scenes to transition into each other seamlessly. It's the most absurd editing I've seen in a while, but it matches the story well because of how campy it all is. There's also some incredibly bizarre psychedelic transition sequences that pay homage to the exploitation films of the 20th century that this film is inspired by, and some people might be put off by them. But I think that they're creative and were good releases of tension. The most memorable aspect of the film is the casting, which is a masterstroke. Margaret Qualley and Geraldine Viswanathan emerge as superstars, radiating lots of charisma and intrigue, while Beanie Feldstein injects her trademark humor, effortlessly stealing scenes. Qualley, with her exaggerated Texas twang and unshakable confidence, is both uproariously funny and magnetic. Oscar nominee Colman Domingo, as the antagonist, brings a gravitas and intensity to his role, turning in a performance that is both menacing and mesmerizing. Pedro Pascal and Matt Damon, in their brief cameos, embrace the absurd, their over-the-top antics providing a delightful contrast to the more grounded performances. They play their parts with a palpable sense of joy, adding a tangible layer of playfulness to the film. Bill Camp, in his limited screen time, manages to leave an indelible mark, reinforcing his reputation as a scene stealer. Joey Slotnick and CJ Wilson, playing criminals tasked with the pursuit of locating the protagonists, offer performances that, while competent, veer towards the derivative, echoing familiar archetypes established by Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare in Fargo. Nonetheless, their efforts contribute to the rich mosaic that makes the film an engaging watch. And I admit, they had a few good scenes. Technically speaking, the film is very well done. The set design, costume design, and cinematography are outstanding, demonstrating a keen eye for cinematic shots and impactful, visually arresting color schemes that imbue each scene with a distinct, stylized character. The vivid hues employed throughout create an unforgettable visual tapestry, effectively anchoring the film in its 1999 setting. This is exemplified in a particular silhouette shot early on that remains etched in memory. The choice of locations is equally commendable, with each environment brimming with life and rich texture. The use of color, such as the striking contrast between red and blue for the protagonists and the stark black and white attire of Colman Domingo's antagonist, is not just aesthetically pleasing, but also serves as a nuanced narrative device, subtly revealing layers of the characters' personalities and roles within the rich screenplay. The screenplay skillfully channels the Coen brothers' typical vibe, echoing classics like Raising Arizona, The Big Lebowski, and Burn After Reading. It's a blend of comedy and drama, packed with all the iconic Coen elements. A road trip, a throwback setting, hilariously inept criminals, quirky accents, and misadventures around a mysterious MacGuffin device. But at its heart, this story reveals itself as a coming-of-age tale, focusing on a woman's journey to sexual liberation. Geraldine's character development is a standout, handled with a sensitivity that's both moving and authentic. It's a script that not only entertains, but also delves into themes of personal discovery and freedom. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film stands at 66% for critics, and somehow shockingly at 34% for audience members. I wanted to take a moment to address some of the film's critiques and defend the film because I think it deserves it. Firstly, some reviewers, like the AV Club, criticize the film for lacking originality, pointing out that it only reminds viewers of better films from the past, without offering enough substance or humor to be memorable. In response to this, I think it is essential to delve deeper into the nuanced fabric of cinematic storytelling. It's a common pitfall to equate originality with the novelty of narrative alone. However, originality in art, especially in cinema, transcends mere plot innovation. It encompasses the unique synthesis of style, character portrayal, and thematic exploration. Also, we're at a point in storytelling where originality is rare and isn't all that matters. Moreover, the film's apparent simplicity and light-hearted veneer are not a lack of substance, but rather a deliberate stylistic choice. In an era where cinema is often burdened by the gravitas of realism and complexity, Drive Away Dolls offers a refreshing return to the roots of film as a medium of escapism and joy. Its humor, which might seem understated, is carefully crafted to resonate with an audience seeking a respite from the heaviness of everyday life. This subtlety and humor is a sophisticated art, one that does not rely on low-hanging fruit, but instead builds a rapport with the audience, inviting them into its world with a gentle nudge rather than a forceful push. While the criticism of Drive Away Dolls for its lack of originality and substance is a valid perspective, it overlooks the film's deeper artistic intentions. Its homage to classic exploitation cinema, understated humor, and the all-over-the-place narrative are not shortcomings, but rather deliberate choices that contribute to its unique charm and character, making it a memorable addition to the Coen filmography. Secondly, it's been noted that the film tries too hard for cleverness, with almost every line being excessively squeezed, and the acts of violence are also seen as crossing over into callousness. Contrary to this view, I found the film's humor to be effectively executed, resonating with a cleverness that is both intentional and artistically significant. The dialogue, which some may perceive as excessively squeezed for cleverness, actually contributes to the film's unique comedic voice, reminiscent of a style that values quick wit and rapid-fire exchanges. Humor is ultimately subjective, and I found both the humor and the way that it is delivered by the actors to be tremendous. Regarding the violence in the film, it's crucial to understand it within the context of its genre and cinematic influences. The acts of violence, while bold and unflinching, echo the stylistic choices of directors like Quentin Tarantino, known for his flamboyant and stylized portrayal of violence. This approach to violence isn't just for a bit of shock value, but also serves a purpose of heightening the stakes or underscoring a thematic point. The final significant critique comes from the film verdict, which takes issue with the character portrayals in the film. The critique highlights that both the eccentric protagonists and the criminals come across as unrealistic, detracting from the film's potential for humor and suspense. In challenging their critique of Drive Away Dolls, it's essential to acknowledge the film's artistic direction and narrative style. This movie embraces a stylized approach, where characters are intentionally exaggerated rather than nuanced or deeply complex. That said, the criticism regarding the characters' depth isn't without merit. It's true that some characters in the film are confined to a single dimension, playing out one-note roles that limit their potential for depth and development. This aspect, while noticeable, doesn't detract from the film's core objective, to entertain and engage audiences through a lighthearted, unpretentious narrative. My only real issues with the film are that some of the characters should have gotten more notes to play, as to not become one-dimensional, and that Quali needed a few more weeks to perfect her accent, although honestly it added to the camp and didn't take away much for me. I think it's important to note that this film is definitely camp. I feel like a fairly decent amount of audiences are unfamiliar with the term, so I'd like to clarify it. Camp in cinema refers to an aesthetic style and sensibility characterized by deliberate exaggeration, theatricality, and irony. It often involves an ostentatious, over-the-top approach to the subject matter, presentation, and style. Camp in film is not necessarily concerned with being high art or traditionally tasteful, but rather embraces the absurd and the flamboyant. Films that are considered camp might feature exaggerated characters, ludicrous situations, garish visuals, or self-aware humor. The camp aesthetic is often linked with certain genres like B-movies, horror, and science fiction, but it can appear in a wide range of films. Importantly, camp can be both intentional and unintentional. Some filmmakers deliberately employ camp elements for comedic or satirical effect, while other films become campy due to dated effects, overly dramatic acting, or other elements that were not intentionally comedic or exaggerated at the time of their creation. A couple of other recent camp films, for example, are Barbie and Poor Things. This movie is definitely deliberately campy and does it well. If this sounds like something that might interest you, then I definitely recommend this film. Ultimately, Drive Away Dolls isn't striving for highbrow cinematic profundity. Instead, it revels in its own quirky universe, creating a space where characters are free to be outlandish and the narrative free to be unapologetically fun. In this context, the film succeeds in delivering an enjoyable experience that doesn't hinge on the complexity or realism of its characters, but rather on its ability to charm and amuse its audience. For me, this movie was like a breath of fresh air on a rough day, reminding me of the good stuff in life. It's a showcase of the lead's talents and of the timeless writing of Ethan Coen. I had a blast watching it and totally recommend it. It's a real good time. Super funny, not too long, and plain comforting. I'm rating it a light 8/10 and can't wait to see what either of the Coen brothers does next. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you think.